Hey, it's Brennan. Thanks for tuning in again. Today I'm speaking with Jenny Ruegamer of Jenny Ruegamer Design about how much it costs to remodel specific rooms in your home. You're listening to the Close to Home podcast, the lifestyle and real estate podcast centered in Seattle. I'm Brennan Klaus, and I'm a broker at Avenue Properties. Hello and welcome to Close to Home. I'm super excited today to have back Jenny Ruegamer of Jenny Ruegamer Design. Hi Jenny, thanks for joining me.
Yes.
The first thing I want to talk about is, we've talked about this on a previous episode, but what are some of the specific timelines you're seeing in Seattle right now for completing remodels, whether that's a room or an entire home?
I'm seeing time frames get longer and longer. I feel like each month I'm amazed by how far out most of the good contractors are, because construction is really making those time frames as long as they are. We're seeing, a basic remodel, interior remodel could be a year and a half out before you can get on a contractor's schedule, and then the actual construction could be anywhere from, 3 to 6 months. When you're talking about bathrooms, I see a little variation there because sometimes you can fit into a contractor's schedule a little easier with a smaller project. But I would say bathrooms can be 6 to 9 months out.
Yeah, and you say good contractor, which is important to emphasize, correct? Because it's really important to have
someone you trust, someone that you've seen their work, someone that maybe is a referral from another project or a referral from your designer. And those contractors can have really long lead times.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when people work with you as their designer, do you have contractors that you recommend to them? Is that part of the process?
Yes. And most people, especially in this market, when they come to me as a designer, are asking that right away. Do you have people you can recommend? Because it's just hard to even get a contractor to return your phone call. So yes, I definitely have people that I've worked with in the past and will recommend to clients.
Got it. So in Seattle, it's important to plan ahead.
Yes.
It's important to think far in the future for your remodel. That's the first thing about Seattle. So next I want to talk about, in Seattle, what should people think about when they're budgeting the cost of a kitchen versus a bathroom versus maybe something like a bedroom or a living room?
And that's a little bit tricky, especially for kitchens and bathrooms, because the scope and quality can really vary. And every time I say what I think a bathroom should cost, it's always a lot more.
Yeah.
Just because things are rising so fast in the Seattle market. I would say bathrooms. Last year I saw a range of a small basic bathroom. Construction and materials were probably $18,000-ish, but most of the bathrooms were close to about $35,000.
Yeah.
And obviously they can go up from there,
right,
depending on your materials. But again, a lot of that has to do with the cost of plumbers and electricians right now. So even if you control your material costs, your tile costs, it's still going to be an expensive space.
Yeah. So I think what you're saying ultimately is budget higher rather than lower.
Yes.
You will save yourself time and probably money.
Yes, it's going to cost more than you think. It's okay to have a smaller budget and work with a designer to try to get there. And I will do my best if somebody only has a specific amount of money. But usually that is narrowing the scope of that remodel. So maybe you keep your bathtub and shower as it is, and you just change out the vanity and a light fixture and maybe some new tile instead of gutting and changing the whole thing.
Right.
So smaller budgets actually for me can be more fun, but it is a challenge in this market to make those work.
Absolutely. And what if you had to estimate something where it was just more of a living space, like let's say a bedroom or a living room? Where does that come in on the range of prices that you see day to day?
And that range, again, is huge. And one of the first things I usually talk to clients about is budget. What are your expectations for specific pieces of furniture and the cost that they're going to be? Because there's a range. You can buy a sofa online for $1,000, or you can spend a couple thousand at a retail store in Seattle, or you can get a custom one done for $15,000-$20,000. And so I think maybe even more important than understanding what those numbers could be is understanding what your own budget is, because I see a lot of people have an expectation for what they want to do, but their budget doesn't match that. So it's more important in those kind of spaces where furniture is involved and you can control those costs to determine what it is you want to spend. Because I've done living rooms where we've just I just finished one where they already had a sofa. We changed out a rug. We had a $6,000 budget, which was a tight budget, but we got to do some really nice things because we were just dealing with a carpet and a new coffee table, some new accessories. We found a really neat vintage chair that we had reupholstered. So it's possible to meet a smaller budget. It's just, again, controlling that scope and understanding what you want to spend.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. Matching the budget in your mind to the expectations you have, and doing that maybe before you even meet with a designer like yourself, and having a number in mind, and what can you use that you already have versus what do you want brand new.
Exactly.
So I think maybe my question in a way was a little bit off, and it should have been more like...
I think for those rooms your budget could be it really could be anything.
Yeah, and that's a tough question to put on you too, because it really could vary, from what you said, 6,000 to probably six figures.
Yes, and I see a lot of first-time home buyers right now will do like a living room in phases. So first it's like, okay, get the core pieces in the space, your couch that you may have for a really long time, spend to get something nice, and then come back in later and maybe fill in with the artwork or a side table, things that you could maybe do later to kind of phase it out so you can have the pieces that you want. Eventually, you'll have it all.
Yeah, that's a good point too. You can think about your budget, but you can also think about it in phases.
Yes.
So you don't have to spend all your money right at once. So since we're talking about budgets in Seattle specifically, what are some surprising costs that you see that people usually don't factor in when they're thinking about their budget? What are some of the costs that come up that you see a lot of clients raise their eyebrows about because they didn't think about that before?
I think the one that pops out to me that always surprises me is electrical. Anytime you have electrical work or, redoing the lighting in a space, those costs, they're expensive. They're always more than I think they're going to be. They're always more than the client thinks they're going to be. So it's just knowing that the more changes you make with electrical, that budget's going to be much higher than you imagine. And then I think even just we were talking about furniture. I think people's expectation of furniture cost a lot of times is off, and part of that's because of the internet. You can find cheap things all over the internet. And so there tends to be an expectation, especially with first-time home buyers, that furniture is going to be a lot cheaper than it is. And there's great things in the lower price range, but I think that expectation I see all the time is way off.
Yeah.
And it surprises people what they need to be budgeting for furniture.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can definitely find things. It's kind of like shopping for clothes. You can find things that are in the lower price range, but they may not last as long. They may not be as comfortable.
Yeah.
They may not be exactly what you're looking for.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then lighting, you bring up in Seattle especially, is so important. The way you light your home and how it feels inside, especially on those gray days. So I think that's good for people to keep in mind as they're thinking about their budget.
Yes, yeah, and lighting is so important that it is important to budget that in and not just cross it off because it's expensive.
Yeah. So to wrap up, what's hot in Seattle right now? What would you say is the hot ticket item?
Oh, hot ticket item. I mean, I think in general, maybe not. This is not as specific as you're asking. I see Seattle really shifting. Seattle's always been there. I feel like the Seattle interior is very authentic, very controlled, authentic materials, beautiful woodwork, very controlled, not a lot of color. But I see Seattle really shifting, and it could just be influx of people from all over. But the style, people are becoming a little bit more eclectic in their style and not afraid to mix in things. I I think that Seattle authenticity of material and kind of serene interior is still there, but you're starting to see punches of color and mixing in, in Seattle it used to just be everything's mid-century.
Yeah.
People were only bringing mid-century, but now you see mid-century mixed with some traditional pieces, mixed with some beautiful woodwork pieces. So I see Seattle kind of shifting into a little bit of a different style than has been the typical Seattle style. You know that Seattle aesthetic I'm talking about, where it's just this very like
outdoorsy kind of
outdoorsy, like using authentic materials like woods and even concrete. And
and was it
really
white mostly or like grays?
Yeah, kind of whites. It's probably like this big, like it's
like
beautiful,
this? Yeah,
beautiful and authentic to what it is. But I do see a shift where you start to mix in like something crazy that kind of throws that off a little bit.
Yeah, interesting. It's cool.
But it's hard to describe.
Fair. Yeah, that's probably also representative of the influx of people we have and, different tastes coming from all over.
Yeah, which I think is great. I think people are loosening up a little bit in Seattle with their interiors. It used to be, you had to have a beautiful, piece of wood coffee table or a wood bed. I'm trying to think how to describe that. People were very, I guess, almost conservative in how they looked at their spaces, and now I'm surprised by people are willing to take a little bit more risk with what they're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's interesting to hear too, especially at this time in Seattle's growth.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it. Talking about some of specific design trends and budgeting and timelines in Seattle. Thanks for listening to the Close to Home podcast. Be sure to rate and review us on Apple or wherever you find this podcast. If you'd like to contact me, Brennan Klaus, about any of your real estate needs, you can find me at 206-899-9101 or at brennenklaus.com. That's BRENNENCLOUSE.com.